And I'll tell you, we all missed it. Judge
Welcome.
Nugent missed it.
It's Thursday, and that means it's time for the English show, brought to you by Beatrice Kopp on News Radio 570 WKBN. On this gorgeous Thursday, where we're sitting right now with 69 degrees. Let's go to the law firm of Beatrice Kopp and check in with attorney David Beatrice tonight, who's bringing us a special guest. David, hello.
Yes, I'm so happy to bring you a special guest. And our special guest, his name is Steve Dettelbach. And he is I want to make sure I get this right. You're the former director of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. It's actually the BATF, right?
Right.
Everyone just shortens it to the...
And it's actually the BATFE, right? Because you can't forget explosives.
Tell him to get close to the microphone.
Yeah,
Let's
get close to the
everything
microphone.
going.
There we go. So he's the 8th director of the BATFE, which is the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. He held that position from July 13th, 2022 to January 17th, 2025. And prior to that, he was the Northern Ohio AUSA. So he was the top man in charge of all of the U.S. attorneys in the Northern District, which runs from the Indiana border to the Pennsylvania border, Mansfield up, right?
Right.
Mansfield up.
So that state up north.
Yeah, to that state up north, right? So, I thought I'd have him on because a lot of people, I don't know what the controversy is with the BATF, but gun enthusiasts don't seem to like the BATF. And why is that?
Well, I don't know why it is that there are certain people who have very strong feelings about ATF. I will tell you, in my career, I got to know ATF first as a prosecutor.
Right.
So I would have agents who would come in. We were talking about these kind of cases before we started, right? Mostly doing violent crime cases, mostly doing gang cases. I did a great case here in the Valley when I was U.S. attorney involving the LSP gang, right? That was a big ATF case.
Right.
So these kinds of cases, really, really not controversial stuff. Violent crime. And that really is the way I would tell people what it is. ATF is basically the federal law enforcement agency that's job is to only focus on violent crime. There is also, that's 90% of what happens. There's also a regulatory function. And I think it's because of the strong feelings that people in the United States have about firearms, about the Second Amendment, about people who think there should be more regulation on firearms, people who think there's less. And also, honestly, the sort of the political climate we're in, which is just so incredibly divisive. Everybody is mad at everybody else all the time. And so you're right. As a director, I really went there thinking it's a violent crime job, and we do mostly violent crime things. And agents are incredible, very dangerous job, by the way, to be an ATF agent, because by definition, every guy you go after is usually armed, right?
Right.
Because that's the cases that they do.
Sure.
But there's a lot of strong feelings about the regulatory part of it, even though it may be only 10-5% of.
So what's interesting, Ron, about the regulatory part, and I didn't know this until I did an ATF case. There's an office in West Virginia, right? Where in West Virginia?
Yeah, well, there's a lot. Yes, there's in Martinburg, West Virginia, is where a lot of ATF's off-site offices are. There's a few locations. That's one of them.
And they send now, you would think a firearm is a firearm, but there are a lot of components under federal law that qualify as firearms. For instance, a bullet, right, is considered a firearm, right?
Well, a bullet under certain statutes. So this is the United States Congress, right? So they write them up, and they write them up 435 of them in one place, 100 in the other, and sometimes it comes out looking like a camel that was put together by a committee, right?
Right.
Yes, they're in one of the main statutes, 18 U.S.C. Section 922G, which is the law that says felons can't have guns, right? They also can't have bullets.
because they're considered a firearm.
Right. Well, because in the statute, that's what it says.
And they also, if something's a silencer, that's considered a firearm too, correct?
Well, a silencer, there's a different statute. I know all about this, having now been a director, right? There's a different statute, the National Firearms Act. And the National Firearms Act regulates certain other things, and they include silencers. Silencer is one of the main things. Silencers, machine guns, certain other destructive devices. They have a whole different scheme as to how they get regulated.
But they're the ones that primarily determine if something's a silencer or not.
Well, yeah, there's a group of people down there in Martinsburg who are spend their lives examining firearms. Everything that's firearm. By the way, they have the most complete and really fascinating and firearms collection. They have a museum in that building, that you'll ever see.
Really?
Things from 100 years ago, 150 years ago, and things from last week.
Yeah, wild.
Yeah,
It is wild. And so, like, bump stocks were considered a firearm, and then they weren't, right?
Well, so bump stocks is a really interesting example. So if you remember, this is, 10 years ago.
The Vegas guy.
Yeah. In Las Vegas, there's a country music concert, and we had the worst mass shooting of all time in the United States. I think it was 60 or 70 people were killed, hundreds of injured. And what happened was some guy rented a hotel room that overlooked this country music concert, and he got this thing, which really not that many people I think knew about, called the bump stock, which basically causes the weapon, a normal, I think this was an AR, so a normal long barreled weapon, to fire incredibly rapidly. Okay, so I think most lay people, right, look at it and say it's a machine gun, but it wasn't a machine gun when it wasn't classified as a machine gun. Then President Trump, during the first Trump administration, after the Vegas shooting, he said that he wanted to do some legislation. Like, he wanted to have some more gun regulation. President Trump did. And a lot of people in the firearms community, the Second Amendment community, were like, no. You shouldn't do that, right? And he then said, okay, well, we won't do a law. I'm going to make a rule. He called it, actually, by the way, his big, beautiful rule. That's what he said in the press conference. And the rule reclassified bump stocks as firearms. It changed the classification. So actually, I don't think there was litigation brought against it because President Trump did it. I'm not sure about that, but I'm pretty sure that. And President Biden got elected and immediately got sued, right, for this rule that President Trump had made.
And it got overturned.
And it got overturned by the Supreme Court, divided Supreme Court opinion. And, it was a really, so I went to that argument because I would go to the arguments that involved ATF. And as you say, there's a lot of questioning about, well, how come it be classified this way on this day, and then a year later it changes, and and this is sort of a bigger analogy about the way the regulatory state works, right? And also when you mix the regulatory state with a politically divisive issue, how it comes out.
So the thing I can't understand, and Ron, I know, Ron, you're pro Second Amendment. I can't understand this gun show loophole. When I tell people there's a gun show loophole, they go, what do you mean? I go, if you're not a federally licensed firearm dealer, you could sell a gun to a person at a gun show and they could be a felon, right? As long as you don't know.
Right. So what I always tell people is there's no such thing as the gun show loophole. It doesn't exist in law. The test is, as you said, if you're engaged in the business of selling firearms repetitively for profit. So if that's what the statute said, if you're doing that, you need a license. If you're doing a private sale and you're not engaged in the business, you don't need a license. And what it means to need a license is that you have to run a background check. because FFLs, federal firearms licensees, run background checks. So let's say you go to a gun show, all right, and then there are a bunch of tables. You go to Niles or whatever the gun show is.
They're all over the place,
Right.
down south especially.
But there's a pretty big one up here.
Oh yeah,
Right.
for sure.
Right. So you go to the Niles gun show, and you might have there, however many tables, and you might have one table that's a federal firearms licensee. And this is where they sell on the days the gun show is, right? They'll run a background check, right? And you might have at another table a collector, somebody who is a true collector. They go to the gun show because they're a firearms enthusiast, because they really enjoy guns, and because this is a place to trade, to sort of show their collection, maybe
Sure.
sell some, right? So all that's fine. Those two people are totally fine. What you can't do is sort of take a table next to a collector, right? And have 50 Glocks still in the shrink wrap, the same gun, right?
Right.
And say, well, I'm just collecting this one kind of gun,
Right.
right?
But
You're
they
not
do
really
that.
a collector, and then sell that firearm, right, to some guy who drives out from Cleveland, a gang member, because they can't get the gun at a legitimate firearms dealer, because most firearms dealers are law-abiding. They won't sell guns to felons, right?
Sure.
So, and then you see this. I always tell people, you see this, like, let's just imagine this. Imagine you have the federal firearms licensee at table number 1, and they're selling that Glock for $650. Shrink wrap, here it is, $650, take it. And you see somebody walk past that table for $650, and they go to a different table with not a real collector, I'm going to put it in air quotes, right? A collector,
Sure.
and it's same gun for $950.
And
they
because
walk
there's no
past the
background.
$650 and they buy it for $950, and the reason, of course, is there's no paperwork,
Right.
right? That's what I have a problem with.
Yeah. Sure.
But the first two are fine. Having an FFL at a gun show is fine. But I tell people there's no loophole. That person who sold that gun, who's engaged in the business and selling without license, I tell people it's like when I was a kid, the green eggs in hand. There's no location. It doesn't matter where you break the law. You cannot do it in a car. You cannot do it in a bar.
Yeah.
You cannot do it in a trunk. You cannot do it,
Yeah.
in your bunk.
Right.
So you are not allowed to do that just because you're in a gun show. What was happening was this was starting to happen more and more. There were so many people, and I think the people on the other side in the gun control movement said, well, this is the gun show loophole, right? They were trying to describe illegal conduct, right?
Yeah.
And that phrase kind of got misunderstood, and then people thought, oh, there's a gun show loophole.
Well,
Which there's
it
not.
kind of is though.
Well, if what you mean by loophole is that
A felon can
People
go to
get
a
away
gun
with
show.
that.
Yeah, a felon can go to a gun show and buy a gun from a private collector, and there's no background check.
and if that
But
private
that's not really a private collector, to his point.
right, somebody who's calling, there are legitimate private
There's
collectors.
essentially there's two illegal people in the building. The guy selling the gun, the guy buying the gun.
Right.
Right? Because any reputable firearms dealer wouldn't do that, and any reputable collector wouldn't do it.
And I always tell people, you're exactly right. And I always tell people, the reputable, legitimate FFLs are kind of victims of this
All right.
because it cuts into their law-abiding business.
Yeah.
And people, we have clients, right? We have clients who play by the rules, businesses,
Sure.
and just like in any business, you got one guy who's playing by the rules, dotting his I's, crossing his T's, wants to do the right thing in whatever business. And then you got some other guy down the street cutting corners,
Yep.
and this is whether it's construction, whatever it is, right? And they're making more money, but what they're doing is dangerous.
Yes.
It's the exact same idea.
I agree. I tell people all the time, like, I'll use the police as an example. You'll have somebody disgruntled because maybe the actions of an officer or a couple police officers. Well, one officer or two bad police officers shouldn't dirty the whole pool. There's hundreds of thousands of great ones, right? But it's like that in any business. Doctors, lawyers, anybody can ruin your.
And plus,
your
private sales are not covered. So if I can go on Facebook page or marketplace, right? Or eBay and say, hey, I have a 357 for sale. And as long as I don't know the person buying it is a felon, and there's no obligation on me to vet whether they're a felon.
Right, but that you can do what you said unless you're doing it in a way that you're actually in business.
Right.
You can't.
There's
do
no
it-
way they can keep up with all that. There's just no way.
Well, they do undercover cases. This
All
is
the
what we're
time.
talking about. They're out there checking to make sure the marketplace is fair.
ATF scoops people up all the time out at gun shows. I mean, they're always watching. And
Yeah,
I'm
but
not saying
that's
they
where a
can-
lot of felons get their guns. A lot of felons
No.
get their guns from private people.
A lot of felons get their guns off the streets too.
Yeah.
So I interned with the ATF out of college
Where at?
in the Youngstown office.
Come on.
Oh no, I
Now
listen.
you look so young. One
I-
year, oh, you're gonna kill me now.
He's only been practicing 10
I'm
years.
40.
Okay.
So I graduated from Ohio State in 08, and I did the internship while I was at Ohio State. So it had to be 07, 08, 06, 07. It was one of the greatest experiences.
Who was running the office? Who was Iraq? Do you remember?
Yeah, it was. Oh gosh. Well, okay. Frank Delicio had the office prior to. And Frank was my connection in.
Okay.
All right. So, but I became really good friends with a few agents. A few to this day, I'm super tight with, but one in particular. And Frank is a guy that when he's in town, we all get together and have dinner. But it was one of the coolest experiences of my entire life. And my uncle is a retired Columbus police officer. And when I was in college, I wanted to go into the federal government. And he's like, you got to go to the ATF. And I'm like, I didn't even know what the ATF was.
I love this guy.
And he said,
I love this
he said
guy.
they're the bad boys of the federal
Frank, do
government.
me a favor. Frank's got to get a little closer to his mic too.
Or can you turn up his mic, Leo?
Yeah.
So
Frank.
my uncle, could you hear me, Ron?
Yeah, just be nice and close to the mic for
All
me.
right. So my uncle was a retired now retired. He wasn't at the time. He said, you gotta try to get in the ATF. They're the bad boys of the federal government. And I didn't understand what he meant, but they did all the hard work, tons of undercover. So when I went with those guys, they were infiltrating bike gangs.
Yeah.
It was fascinating. I mean, these guys took on they're bikers, actually. They're all retired bikers now. They're not retired.
They're the
federal
bad boys of the
They
federal law
are
enforcement.
a bunch of tough, rough guys, and they were awesome. I mean, I had all the respect in the world for those guys, but I was on a cover team.
Very dangerous job, right?
So,
very dangerous.
I'm on a
job.
cover team on the south side of Youngstown. I'm interning there, and I'm with. I feel terrible that I don't know who the special agent in charge was because I know him. I can see him.
Okay.
But and we're on the south side. They're doing a buy, and an agent gets shot.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I'm there. I mean, he's thank God was fine. But I'm in the cover car. We come around. It's crazy. I found the gun in a trash can.
I never knew this.
3 houses down from the shooting because they were obviously. I mean, every department swarmed the area after the shooting, and then we were canvassing the area trying to find the shooter. And what was wild is as we were coming up the street, this guy's walking by. And he's looking at our car and giving us like a thumb behind him, like, yo, something happened over there. That was the shooter. They caught him. I'll never forget. The FBI came in and they put a team in around St. Dom's, right on that boulevard.
I think I remember this
It
case.
was wild, but loved it. And I went to Detroit, took the test, and you know who talked me out of going to the ATF? Brian Cox.
Because he was going to go to the FBI.
Yeah,
I
talked
talked
me
Brian out of going to the FBI.
So yeah, I was going to say you didn't finish the story. You found the gun,
Yes.
and the FBI had the press conference.
That might be right, actually. It was wild.
So tell us about the tobacco part of the job.
There's really not much that happens comparatively in the tobacco part of the job.
Except for them selling untaxed cigarettes,
Yeah, so
which is there's an undermarket for that, right?
So the people selling the cigarettes without the stamp, right? The untaxed cigarettes. So I always tell people it's the opening scene of Beverly Hills Cop. It's that guy when he's in the back of the truck selling the smuggled cigarettes. We'll do those cases. I mean, it's not we anymore, but ATF will do those cases. Usually they're more likely to be done when there's a link to some other criminal activity. And sometimes there is. These are fund. Sometimes they're used to fund terrorism. There's a whole bunch of other things. Sometimes used to fund other organized crime efforts. Most of the time, though, those cases are done by the state. It's a state tax. So it's probably
How do they
something-
get their hands on untaxed or because when you buy a pack of cigarettes, there's a stamp on it, right?
Right.
That shows that you pay.
They smuggle it
They smuggle it from
Yeah.
where? Like the
from
where?
Canada or overseas. I mean, it's like anything else. They smuggle it.
Yeah.
You know,
And the alcohol part of it, what
the alcohol
that has to be
again,
left over from prohibition.
Yeah. So the alcohol, tobacco, firearms, and explosives. ATF is a story of criminality in the United States, sort of following those things. So if you think about it, back in the 30s, organized crime arose out of the Al Capone days. It rose out of prohibition.
Right.
Right. The Untouchables, by the way, Elliot Ness is all over ATF headquarters. And I'm a Cleveland guy, so when I was sworn in right in front of Elliot Ness.
Yeah. That's cool.
That's very cool.
Yeah, and I always joke again with our sister agency, the FBI. I always say, we got Elliot Ness, you got J. Edgar Hoover. You tell me.
I'll take Elliot Ness.
Our guy was a real cop.
Yeah.
So
Right.
you have Elliot Ness, and so that you have the alcohol sort of growing out of. Of course, the law changed, prohibition ended, and alcohol became, a legitimate product in the
Sure.
United States. So,
There's still moonshiners out there, though.
right, but really, the focus was on criminality all along. Then you have firearms, which we talked about, and firearms violence is a big problem in the United States. We can talk more about that and why that is, and if any of you can tell me why it all happens, you get a Nobel Prize. Because I think my conclusion is it's not one thing; it's 100 different things. And when people say it's not this, it's not that, they're probably both right.
Let's hang on a second, Dave. We'll pause for our headlines at 5:30, and then we'll pick it up with the discussion.
Ron, I want you to ask him some questions.
No, it's fascinating. I'm busy, Dave. I'm sawing off a shotgun as we're speaking. It's a little hard for me to ask questions. I have a hacksaw.
Dave is your lawyer. He's telling you to stop. Take the fifth. Stop talking.
Only once a year in Las Vegas.
Our legendary iHeartRadio Music Festival.
used to be in charge of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms
And
on
explosives.
the program. Fascinating discussion
Isn't it, Ron?
that we're learning about here. Where did I misplaced my machine gun? I got it here somewhere. I'm looking for it. It's around here
So
somewhere.
we were just talking about that at break. So you
My
can
machine gun?
no, you can buy a tax stamp, right? Because that's what it's called, a tax stamp, right?
Finish it. You should.
If the machine gun was made before 1986, you can buy a tax stamp. They're expensive though, right?
Machine guns that are antique machine guns, like a Tommy gun. I mean, you might pay $30,000 for those.
The
for those
tax.
guns. No. The
Just
tax,
to buy.
the firearm. I mean, these are incredibly valuable firearms. The old, the 1930 Tommy guns, and they're used. They're possessed by collectors. They're not. We say this. They're not typically crime guns, right? But we do have a huge machine gun problem in the country. And the machine gun problem in the country is being driven by 3D printed pieces of plastic that are about as 2 or 3 inches tall. And they're made to defeat the sear in the firearm. You stick them in there, it takes 2 seconds, and you turn just a standard clock into a machine gun. And so you talked about bump stocks in the Supreme Court case. After the bump stock cases, there have been a series of other devices that work totally differently from bump stocks and actually do defeat the mechanism. And I think everybody agrees that a lot of these, what are called Glock switches, are incredibly dangerous, and they're all over the place. And think about it.
They're illegal, the Glock switches?
Yes, they're illegal.
Is there another name for them too?
Well, there's so many different kinds. There's all of these different kind machine gun conversion devices. The Glock switches are the ones that I see the most. But yes, there's a lot of names for different ones. I would see and so many can be made now on 3D printers.
Yeah.
We did a Latin Kings case in New Jersey. And you do the investigation, then you do a search warrant that day, and you round up everybody who's been indicted. And they went into a garage, a home, to do the search warrant, to do the takedown. And in the garage, there's like 4 3D printers going in the Latin Kings. There's a key of cocaine here, there's a gun over there, and there's all these printers whirring. And what they are is they're printing machine gun conversion devices for these Latin King.
Now you can print a 3D gun as long as it has some metal in it, correct?
So whether it's printing or just gunsmithing, you are allowed to make your own firearm. Privately made firearms are legal in the United States. So whether it's 3D printing or some other way, but there is something called the Undetectable Firearms Act, which we Congress renewed during my time at ATF, which basically was passed in order to make it so that airports, stadiums, that the metal detectors at these places can be actually functional and protect us. So you have to have a certain amount of metal in firearms. I forgot, it's a certain number of ounces of metal, because that's when the detectors go. Now, the reality is technology is fast outstripping the law. That's probably pretty common. And because we can't get things done that I think that there's a large consensus on. If there are things that people think are controversial, that people think are bad, I understand Congress not being able to sort of move on that. But there's a lot of things I think that people who have very different views on firearms could still probably agree on.
How is it that
and we can't get those done? We need to be able to get those done and leave the controversial ones. I get it.
Yeah.
I see these gun shows where they have firing ranges, and those automatic weapons they're firing are not made before 1986. They're M16s, they're M4s. How is that allowed?
So it depends. I don't know the situation of what's going on at the particular. I know that we did some cases during the time I was at ATF that involved the misuse of what's called a law letter. And what a law letter is that, obviously there's an exception for police and military. So if you're a police chief and you think that you want to purchase automatic weapons, machine gun for your SWAT team or what be it, right, you're allowed to sort of get it there and try it out, have a sample, right? And so you need a firearms dealer to do that. So the firearms dealer gets the police chief to sign a law letter and send it into ATF, and they approve it. And there were these cases where the police chiefs were not. I mean, this is I remember one case in Iowa. I mean, it was a tiny little police department in a very rural town. They didn't have a big crime, and the chief was signing. The chief who also ran a gun store.
Yeah.
And he was signing letters for himself, and he had 50s. He had 50 caliber, and what he was really doing was he wasn't using them for the police department. He was charging people for an experience.
I've seen that, and that's how they get around that.
Well, I don't know what's going on in Europe, but that's the way this person got around it, and we see that, and it's an abuse of the process. That exception is there for cops. It's not there for people to abuse. I don't know though. At the gun show you're talking about,
I had a friend that went to a gun range, and they had all these different kind of automatic weapons that you could fire. You paid a lot of money for the ammunition, and then you got up there and you got to just rip through a magazine with an M4 and M16 or whatever. And I was always wondering how that's legal. I just didn't understand that.
Yeah, and it might be or it might not be. It depends on the individual. That's the one thing you learn as a lawyer, right? Nothing. You got to know the circumstances before you really know what somebody's doing.
I got to tell you, I never owned a firearm till my son enlisted. Now I have a gun safe in my basement. I have an AR, 2 MP shields, 357, a shotgun. Ask me. The only thing I know how to operate is that 357 because you put the bullets in and you pull the trigger. I don't like the slides because no one's really taught me. My son won't teach me how to load the AR, fire the AR, make sure the AR is clear, nothing. So I'm ready for the zombie apocalypse. I just don't know how to use any of them.
Well, I will say this, a free commercial. It's going to give me a microphone. The other thing that I think is really important about what you said is you have a safe.
Yeah.
I tell people this all the time. It is so important to safely store your firearms. I tell people there is a right to keep and bear arms in this country in the Second Amendment, but there's a responsibility we have as Americans to exercise that right in a safe way. There's no law, but there's a responsibility. And one of the things that I really tell people is, either have it secure or leave it at home. We see all the time gangs, criminals who go to a mall and they go to each car and, they know which cars to look for. They profile the cars, right? And they're probably, less likely to be a firearm in what's those little those little cars that
Prius.
Yeah, Prius. and then
in a Mercedes or something.
No, I was going to say they didn't pick up, right?
Yeah, sure.
Right. Yeah. So they know where to go. They break into the cars and they look under the seats. And they, in 1 year in the United States, we did a study on this at ATF. In 1 year, I can't remember, there's something like 250,000 firearms stolen. And let me tell you something about when you leave your gun in your car and go into the mall or the Starbucks and it's stolen. I'll tell you something about that firearm. Nobody who stole that firearm from your car is going hunting with it. They're not collectors. That gun is going straight to the street and it's going to be used to hurt somebody in your community. So please, make the investment, take the time and store your firearm safely. I know it costs some money. I do, but it's just one of these things as an American about trying to be a better neighbor.
Yeah.
Please do that. So I really think that's important to tell people.
And I noticed that law enforcement and prosecutors' offices are starting to charge more with these parents that freely leave their guns out, knowing their child's a little off.
It's the school shootings really is what precipitated that whole thing.
And I don't understand why that's just a problem in this country. I don't understand.
Every case is different. So sometimes the parents are not at fault.
Charged. No, I agree. I'm saying, but what you're describing, right, is all of a sudden parents are getting charged. And I agree. A lot of times parents aren't at fault, right? But I mean, I've only seen what you're describing in a mass shooting.
Yeah. The one ATF was involved in the case in Michigan where the parents were prosecuted.
And
if
they
you-
got a conviction,
They
right?
did. State case. And they got 2 convictions, I think, if I remember correctly. And, look, if you look at the facts in that case, I think, there was some pretty compelling evidence that the parents really were in the wrong there. But, like everybody, right? I mean, you have kids and, you hope your kids, choose to do something like your kid's doing, to be a hero.
My
But
kid,
you're worried that you're,
my
you're
son is over the edge. He goes, "We don't need regulations on machine guns." I said, "Well, what about a bazooka, Joseph? Should you have a bazooka? If I want to buy a tank, I should be able to go out and buy a tank." I go, "Well, luckily, a majority of Americans don't agree with you. We should have machine guns. I want the Army as well equipped as possible, police well equipped as possible, but I don't think private citizens should have machine guns."
Anybody is listening to this who thinks that a private citizen should be able to get a tank, any person, they should meet Dave Beatrice. Then I'm going to change your mind right away, because I could just have a nightmare of Dave Beatrice driving around
for
in a
sure.
tank,
Ron, do we have any
He's
calls?
Dave-
Anyone
he's
want to
Dave
talk
Beatrice
to
up in a
the?
Mercedes.
Well, it's a fascinating discussion. Dave, I've been a little bit busy. I'm almost done. I'm filing the serial number off of the Snubnose 38.
No, that's against the
and-
law.
No, it's taking forever. I almost have it done here.
There's something else I
Yes.
want to talk to Steve about.
By the way,
Yes,
can I
yes.
say something
Go
about
ahead.
that? So
Yeah.
good luck with that, because ATF has an amazing ability to restore serial numbers. That
The
people think-
forensics anymore are
I mean,
incredible.
They showed me this. We have a lab. ATF has a lab outside of DC. They do incredible work there. They really pioneered the DNA work that's used to trace firearms from touch DNA.
Sure.
Incredible work. But the other thing they do, it's literally like a party trick. It's a magic thing. They could take a firearm where the serial number has been filed off, and they add their potions and treat it in whatever way, and the serial number, like right in front of your eyes, comes back.
Seriously.
Yeah. Now it fades away in like 20, 30 seconds, but they take a picture and that's
they get
evidence
it.
in the case. And it's crazy. So you better file pretty good, because if
Well, I better
if
get
that
the
gun-
next one
they're
up.
going to
I
come
better-
for you, my friend.
I better get a more aggressive file, I think, on this one.
More grit on there.
As he was talking and you guys were talking about background checks, what's his reaction? There's the honor system on these background checks when it comes to mental health issues. And it's basically at the honor system, there's no follow-up to see if you're telling the truth
Or
or not.
drug
So how-
addicted person too.
Yeah.
Look,
how
I think Hunter
good is
Biden
that?
was one of the very few people I know that was
Right.
convicted for being addicted and buying a firearm.
Yeah.
Right.
They
I mean,
just-
keep this in
Do you
mind
know of
before
any
you answer
other
that.
cases like that?
Before you answer that mental health question, remember Beatrice has firearms, and we're
I know.
asking ourselves.
Well,
And go ahead.
no, I mean, look, there is a lot that I said we talk about this. There's a lot of different things that are driving the violent crime problem in the United States. It's not one thing or two things. And I really want people to understand that in my mind, at least, with 40,000 people every year are killed with firearms, and those are just the homicides, right? So
What about suicides? That's a
suicides
big-
suicides are more. Suicides are more.
Jeez, oh, man.
And and maybe I have the number wrong, because I'm a little rusty on my numbers, having left ATF, but it's about 120 people a day from firearms violence. And I guess what I would just say is, I don't think and by the way, that's way more than all of the countries who you'd think compared us with, so sort of large modern countries. Not just 10% more, I think maybe Great Britain 450 times more, or 450% more. So we have an issue. Violent crime is an issue in the United States. Law enforcement has a very hard job. They're working hard every day to do it. I don't think it's fair to put it all on law enforcement. We can have, I firmly believe this, we can have a country where people have the Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms, and we can do things to make it safer. Maybe not perfectly safe, but a little bit safer. And that's the other thing I sort of try to tell people who I try to talk with about this. As I said, nobody's going to come to take away, your guns and your rights. What people might ask you to do is go through some hoops or some inconvenience, and I know it's not what you want to do, but we have to try and do things that at the margins can save lives. Because with such a big problem of people dying, if you can just ticket 1 or 2%,
It's a lot of
Right.
lives.
it's a lot of lives, right? And so I understand, I really do. And a lot of people, because I was in the Biden administration, just automatically sort of assumed certain things, and they didn't like when I did certain things. But the truth of the matter is, the ATF, except for the director, except for me and whoever special appointed, is not a political agency. It's a law enforcement agency. These are apolitical people. These are really brave men and women out there, and they often get thrown into this debate. I'm not talking about Steve Dettelbach. I'm talking about the real people who are out there doing
Well, I
this
know
work.
the gun enthusiasts do not like the ATF.
Yeah, and I just wish, if they don't want to like me, okay, I'm a big boy, I can take it, right? But the men and women who are out there risking their lives in ATF to protect our communities, I would hope we could just set them aside from the politics.
Yeah, it's unfortunately it's such a political. One other thing I want to ask you about. I've seen lately where ballistics are coming under Daubert challenges and not being accepted in the court. I mean, it's a trend now where, it used to be accepted science, and now there's some courts I'm seeing that aren't letting ballistics come in, right?
Yeah. So yeah, I've seen some of that starting as well, and it's really, I really hope that we don't check our common sense at the door on this, because the science has gotten so much better on ballistics. Things are better than they used to be in terms of the ability to do matches. And the National Integrated Ballistic Information Network, or NIBIN, is a true game changer.
It really is.
In
So you might
charging
want to
violent crime.
explain to our. So if a gun has ever been used in a crime, it goes into this national database, correct?
Well, no, it's the cartridge casing,
The cartridge casing.
right? So you go to, and it goes into the national database, and what it is just the way that the hammer strikes the back of the bullet, and the scrapings that are made as the firearm ejects the expended cartridge casing.
It's unique to every firearm.
Unique to every firearm.
It's just amazing to me that it's unique to every firearm, and the way the bullet comes out too, the grooves and the.
That's a different thing, right? That's ballistics, right? Old-fashioned ballistics, yes. But the problem with ballistics is it's a lot harder to find the expended bullet
Right.
than it is the expended cartridge casing.
Right.
And it really has a large. I mean, if you talk to homicide detectives all over the country, they'll tell you this is a true game changer.
Do you know what we're talking about here, Ron?
Yes.
So when a shell casing comes out, so if you're not using a revolver, you're using a slide, what I call a slide. It ejects the shell casing. If you're using a revolver, that shell casing doesn't come out, just the bullet comes out. But most people that have Glocks or 9mm, that shell casing comes out. They find those shell casings. There's a national database. So you might have a weapon that's used in Ohio, and they could trace it to Oklahoma based on this national database and trace down this weapon. It's pretty amazing stuff.
Yeah, there's a guy who is, talk about sort of unheralded heroes. There's a fellow named Tom Brandon. Tom Brandon was the non-politically appointed acting. He's a longtime agent, storied agent, ran different offices, and then he became the acting director. And he really doubled down on investing in the ability to quickly turn around NIBIN. And he came up with the idea that we would create a place where all of these requests for when you got a cartridge casing would go into one central place and gulp. And he built it in Huntsville, Alabama. And he committed to every police department who signed up for the program that in under 48 hours, every single analysis would be run.
Yeah.
So you'd have an answer in under 48 hours. And what he said, Dave, and this goes to your point also about the courts, he said, you're not understanding this tool right. It's really brilliant, actually. You're not understanding the tool right. It's not courtroom evidence. it's a lead in an ongoing homicide investigation. And the chances that, we're going to actually ever have to put this evidence on at trial are very slim. But if you can get
Get you
this,
in the ballpark.
if you can get back to them with the name of the person who owns that firearm, you can do a search warrant.
Sure.
You can do an interview. You can
I just had a case within the last year where they had a hit and they traced the gun back to my client because of the shell casing.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
And did you go to trial or did the case resolve?
No, I mean, once they brought a guy in and says, yeah, I sold him the gun. And
Yeah. And these it was almost like you hear the story about rape kits sitting on the shelf, right?
right.
There was it was taking 30, 40 days to do these comparisons, and that's just no good for
Right.
if you're going to catch somebody.
Well, now with AI, it's even got to be more incredible.
Well, so you go down there to it's incredible. I mean, the company that makes the technology is incredible. The microscopy, 3D microscopes that it goes into to generate the image to comparison, it's incredible. But you go into this room, and they do several thousand a day. And I was the boss. I go in there, and they're working, and it's like you're going into like this library. But if you remember, like not like the library with the kids, or the library like when you were in school, where you get nervous just walking in the darn room, right? Everybody's cranking, and they had these two screens in front of them, and they're doing these comparisons. And then there's this whole system of double and triple checking whenever there's a hit, And then if you want to put it on in court, you have to redo the whole thing again, and then you have to have another separate certified examiner do the actual examination. So, but you go into that room in Huntsville. And I'll tell you, it's just talk about a vision of how government could help people. He was a great investigator and a great team. It wasn't just him. Came up with this idea, and police departments all over the United States depend on this now to solve their crimes.
You know what amazes me, Steve, is we've not, knock on wood, had a major terrorist attack since 9/11. And I got to credit people with like the ATF that can, they get leads of people that are trying to build these bombs with big fertilizer orders, or there's certain things that go into bombs where the ATF gets tipped off and they then go investigate it. Like if you're not a farmer and all of a sudden you're buying all this fertilizer, the ATF sort of picks that up, right?
Yeah, FBI, ATF, the Joint Terrorism Task Forces, all look at those kinds of, red flags. And it was the business community, right?
And the ATF's the ones that broke the Boston Marathon bomber, right?
Yeah. So that's one of those cases, though, where then they make the movie and it's all about the FBI.
But it was the ATF that did it. It broke the case.
The other one that I always tell everybody about is Oklahoma City. So I forgot if it was McVeigh or Nichols, but ATF agent was the one who ended up finding and arresting federally that person first, and the FBI's there too, and they make it. They say, hey, we're going to not do this thing. We're going to both walk this person out here. I mean, every camera in the world's there, right? We're going to take off our
insignias. 3-letter agencies. We call
USA is our only insignia, right? And sure enough, he walks out and the guy's right behind him. Sure enough, the picture comes up the next day. He put his hat back on. The FBI guy had his hat back on.
There's a lot of competition amongst
There's
these
a lot
agents.
of competition. One idea that I had that I also thought would have been great to sort of send the message of we're not after people, who are lawful, law-abiding gun owners is, I always thought that there should be a competition between the different federal law enforcement agencies on marksmanship. That they would have like
It's got the best shot.
Attorney General's Cup or something where they could have a tournament or something, right?
Right.
And by the way, I ask this a lot to people. Who I'm told frequently are in the federal law enforcement community by far the best shooters?
Secret Service.
Nope. Got to guess. You'll never guess.
United States
No, we're
Marshals.
pretty good. Nope.
IRS.
The United States Air Marshals.
Air Marshals.
The Air Marshals.
And you never know when they're on a plane.
No.
Isn't that crazy? I had no idea.
Well, they would have to be.
But I also just think that I was asked why, and they said, well, the rigor of their firearms requirements are different than everybody else's. They have to issue far more frequently. And they would say, what the other agents say is, we don't have time to be at the range every day.
Yeah.
We actually have to get bad guys, so we can't be at the range every day, or else I'd be just as good as him.
Right.
I mean, you think too, you're on a plane, there's so many people. I mean, you better be precise.
Yeah.
God forbid.
God
Yeah.
forbid, exactly. So I, there's a lot of competition between the different agencies, and but all kidding aside, I mean, of course, I'm ran ATF, and I got to know those people, and they're just incredible.
Ron, do we have any calls? Anyone want to talk
There's
real
2
quick?
minutes left of the show.
Well,
you
he
do,
can
but
take
the-
a call.
We're 30 seconds before
Okay,
it got
Ron.
ended, and I'm just cleaning up my blasting cap for my dynamite. But I will say, let's see, I got some emails real quick. McVeigh was stopped by a cop on a traffic stop for no plate and arrested because he had a concealed firearm. They said they wanted to kind of make sure that he knew that. And another guy, well, I have more. We got to have the guy back on, David.
All right, we'll have him. I promise you, we'll have him back on.
All right. Thank you. Legal Show
Steve,
brought to
that
you
was
by
great.
Beatrice Cop.
Very
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it very much. This worked out perfect. It's just on our way. So I'm sorry about dinner. I really
That's all
appreciate
right.
it. Next time we'll
You got
do
to
it.
come back.
I will do it. I would love
I'd
it.
love to have you come back because
So, Leo, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Steve, I had some health issues during winter, but
Came home and he shot himself
what do you
without ever
think
talking to anyone.
about Indianapolis?
When I came home
I
that
don't know.
night,
You tell me. I'm so far out of it now. I mean, I'm congratulations on everything.
Thank you.
You're doing great.
Yeah,
You got a little streak
Okay.
going.
Yeah.
If they were down
For
into your
now.
house, for
Nice
protection,
talking to you.
All right.
it's a terrible miss.
once you pull that trigger, that's it. There is no coming back.
I'm just
I hate to say it, we
67
lost enough
Americans a day
races because of
die
this.
by gun suicide.
So maybe